I call this meeting of the Hurst-Euless-Bedford Independent School District to order, that the record show that a quorum of board members is present, that this meeting has been duly called, and that notice of this meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code Chapter 551. Good evening to everybody. Tonight, the Board of Trustees is meeting in a called board work session meeting. The board welcomes and appreciates comments and input from the community. Open forum is provided at each meeting to allow the public to address the board. There will be two open forums tonight. Open forum number 1 is to hear requests regarding agenda items only. Open forum number 2 is to hear requests or make comments regarding non-agenda items and will be heard at the end of the meeting. Those addressing the board are asked to limit their comments to 3 minutes per meeting. The speaker should identify his or her name, group affiliation if any, and make a brief presentation with an identified solution if one is sought. Remarks should be addressed to the board as a whole. Oral presentations may not include charges against any employee or board member by name. It is my responsibility to determine if the person addressing the board has attempted to resolve a concern informally or through the district's complaint policies. If not, the speaker will be directed to follow the appropriate policy. The board requests that all presentations be made in a courteous, respectful, and professional manner and asks that speakers monitor their own behavior. If you wish to speak during one of the open forums, please fill out one of the cards located on the table in the entry hall. Mr. Chapman, any comments? No. And no clarifications? All right. We do not need a open forum. I'm sorry. We don't need a closed session. So open forum number 1. We do need an open forum. Read the long way. All right. All right. Miranda Beckman.
Oh, there's one more. Okay, in July of 2021, I requested an opt-out for technology for my first grader. I spoke with my child's principal, Ms. Clark, and Dr. Harrington. I was told this was an impossibility because the district wasn't going to ask teachers to do more work, and so they weren't going to allow kids to opt out. Fast forward to December of 2021, I request access to my child's iPad. I'm denied. I'm told in a phone conversation several throughout the year with Dr. Harrington that iPads must stay at school because it's not age appropriate to take them home due to breakage. My son brought it home every day in kindergarten. My child was allowed to opt out of technology in December, and I've put all those emails in there that went back and forth between us. So one parent, HEB, was granted this special request by Dr. Harrington. I want all parents to have the opportunity to opt out next year. I don't want there to be an opt-in feature and you can't opt out because that's what the registration paperwork was this year. And if you don't know, you can't do paper registration. It has to be on the computer, so you don't have a choice. You have to click whatever the radio buttons are and then you have to move on. So I want that changed for next year, and I don't want my kid on the technology next year. Okay, now I'm gonna talk about secondary. And what you have on this sheet, the top, is all of the apps that have my students' information. And I've put in a FERPA request, and you can see that most of them, no, the top is secondary. Most of them didn't reply, so I have no idea what information you've sent to them. The bottom is elementary. Some of them replied, but I've given you some letters that just show that they're like, oh, we don't do it, and that's all the information that I got. So in September of 2021, I was given access to GoGuardian Parent app to monitor technology usage for my children in junior high. My concerns were heard as Mr. Forrester spoke at a board meeting in the fall to let you know this app does not meet expectations and that technology was looking into other apps for parents. No one has contacted me in months. Back to the Go Guardian Parent app. Again, I'm the only parent in the district with this app. I feel like I'm noticing a trend. The squeaky wheel gets the grease. Well, I'm not here to be the squeaky wheel. I'm here to enact change, and I want to protect all students and not just my own. In December, I made this FERPA request for all the data that you've been collecting on my children since 2019. Prepare to be astounded. I'm providing you information about 2 students in this district, just my older 2. I was given Excel spreadsheets with information regarding their internet activity. So think about how many times they've logged on and how long they've been on. If I were to print my one son's information from 2019, it was 15 pages. 2020, if you combine my 2 boys, it would have been 1,409 pages of internet access, like times they've logged in and spent time on the internet, on your computers. In 2021, it was a combined 2,692 pages. And this year, for the month of January, it was 260 pages. I'm sorry I didn't print all those out for you. It's a lot of squiggles and numbers and hashtags you can't decipher anyway. And there are combined flag searches, so think inappropriate content, suicide, drugs. In 2020, they had 52. In 2021, they had 227. You know what? I have contacted all of y'all so many times, and nobody returns my phone calls or emails. I have one more paragraph, and you're going to listen tonight. What will the number be this year? What are the other number of students' pages of internet searches and time they've spent in inappropriate things? And I've sat in this room and you've told me that you use Beacon and that you're going to call me if my kids have an inappropriate search. Ms. Ross, nobody has ever called me, not one single time. You have given my children access to Pandora's box all day, and I have no control over the content that they access. Most of the information that was given through this FERPA request is indecipherable. It means nothing to me, but the mental anguish, hours lost, and knowledge that I can't protect my kids on your technology means something. Are you tracking the grades as you push more and more technology? Are the kids thriving with this increased access? They're not. How many advanced academic students, now that you're using Canvas, are in credit recovery? Know what? If you'll respond to an email, then I'll stop.
Okay.
My guess is that kids are falling behind,
We're
and
done
they're
now.
absolutely not using it for academic purposes.
I gave you plenty of extra time. Thank you.
I bring this to you hoping that you'll listen to me. I have emailed y'all many, many times, and nobody responds to my emails.
Okay, Ms. Beckman.
I have been to board meetings. I have emailed you. I have met with Dr. Hamilton and Mr. Chapman, and you have not answered my concerns.
Okay. We are not going into closed session, but we will be hearing, let's see, disbursements for the month of February 2022. Any questions on that?
No.
Okay, Reading Academies update. Dr. Harrington?
Yeah, this evening, Dr. Norgard is going to present the Reading Academy update for me.
Good evening. I am bringing to you the Year 3 update for our K-3 Reading Academy. Similar to when we talked about pre-K under House Bill 3, we've had several years to phase things in. So we're looking at Year 3 for our K-3 Reading Academies. The first couple of slides are kind of grayed out on the background because these are simply reminders. These have been in the report for the last 2 years of why we have Reading Academy from TEA for our early literacy focus. And I'm not sure what just happened there. Okay, I'm going to maybe use this instead. We'll use this. And who all needs to participate, because it is more than just teachers. It's anyone who works with those K-3 students and has a teaching certificate. So PE, music, and art teachers were eventually removed from the requirement, but we've got a lot of non-classroom teachers that are also a part of this Reading Academy through requirements. We do have different options. We have in our district chosen the comprehensive cohort option, both for our local and our biliteracy teachers from Spanish immersion and our bilingual programs participating at Region 11. So how have we staffed this for the last 3 years? Our first year, we did have a part-time administrator. We had a recently retired elementary principal that was working with us part-time. That was the year we were moving all of our principals through the program and helping us with that. But once she helped us get some processes in place, you can see we have not continued with that role. And actually, we're not hiring any new cohort leaders this year. We are staying with the 4 that we bumped up to last year. As far as who all is participating, we're supposed to have everyone through this year. That is the requirement of House Bill 3. So basically, anyone who hasn't, this is the year. So the content, the way that this is delivered, it's 10 days of instruction is the full program. We had a new option from TEA this year that we were actually quite excited to have the opportunity to pursue. So you will see, even though I mentioned we have 4 local cohort leaders, you'll see there's 2 lines. 3 of our local cohorts will be a July 2022 to June of 23 timeline. But we're going to hold 1 cohort back to start in January of 2023. It's going to run the 12 months of the calendar year. That does satisfy the requirement of participating by the 22-23 school year, even though they will not finish until we're into the 23-24. This was a new option, and you'll see we have, this is our local name, not TEA's, referring to that as our new hire cohort. When we have brand new teachers that come in and you've participated and been parts of our new professional week, that week alone, before they even start, is so much information for our new teachers, and there's so many new things that are happening to them in that first semester. So we thought if we can hold that group back, because they're not held back from the requirement, they are required to participate this year, but if we can hold them back until January, we can use these, our January cohort leader can be supporting them through the fall, because we know that our new teachers need support just before they officially start the content. So that's why we have 1 cohort starting in the spring. We also know sometimes in August, as we look at our school year and where enrollment landed, we sometimes have to move a teacher. Someone who was going to be 4th grade becomes 3rd grade, so we didn't think they needed to be in Reading Academy, and suddenly they are. They could also be part of that January cohort. And then our biliteracy cohort at Region 11, we are not in complete control of those days. We do get to request the pattern of what days so that we know when our teachers will be pulled. And last year, actually, they gave us exactly what we asked for, even down to which teachers were pulled on which days so that we weren't leaving single campuses. So we feel like that will be a workable schedule for our teachers, but it's ultimately set by Region 11. So there are lots of various costs associated. We do pay an authorized provider cohort fee even for our local implementation cohorts. And of course, our 4 local cohort leaders are teachers on special assignment, so we have their salaries in as well. Then you'll see several lines that have to do with stipends for whether these days were happening. We pulled teachers in on the summer when they're not on contract, they get a stipend. If we pulled them on school days, we need to pay for substitutes. That's why we tried to maximize our opportunities with district PD days to use those, but we only have 2 of those in a school year. And for our new hires, we're only using 1 because they are new hires. They also need other district PD that's happening. The substitute pay for our school day trainings, you may wonder, with the size of our cohorts, that number at 210, remember back to the roles of who else participating, they're not all classroom teachers, so we don't actually need a sub for every single Reading Academy participant. These are just our estimated numbers on those that we need to place a sub in a classroom in order to complete that training. And then the last 2 lines have to do with our biliteracy cohorts at Region 11. So when you look across the 3 years of implementation, this is a major investment, but I would like to thank you for the investment in our Reading Academies program. You may hear from school board members in other districts. You may have heard from other teachers. We have certainly heard, members of ELT at different trainings, that other districts are really struggling with this. A really kind of aha moment for me after we completed year 1, Region 11 told me, in addition to our paying our cohort fees, we were going to have to sign an agreement that at least 95% of our participants would stay enrolled. And I was like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't they be enrolled? And every other district that participated with Region 11 in the first year dropped participants, some of them by up to half of their cohorts left. And some of that had to do with the model. We chose the comprehensive model where our teachers are really coached and supported through this. They receive training in person, our cohort leaders in their classroom supporting them, giving them feedback on those artifacts that is not as robust in the blended model. So we have had great success, and including this year as well. Some of our participants that are going to Region 11 for the biliteracy said they showed a slide with districts and their rates. And again, this year, HEB is the only one still with 100% participation. But I think it's because we have set this up in the best possible model for our teachers. So questions about Reading Academy?
Any questions?
Holly, have we had, in addition to 100% participation, have we had 100% pass the assessments?
Yes, I'm sorry, 100% completion.
Okay, very good.
I used the wrong term, completion. Mhm.
As we've moved from the first 2 years into the last year of this, how many individual teachers do we still need to put through these 4 cohorts? What do the numbers look like?
We have almost 240 in all those different roles. We have 240 participants. Some of them are APs, some are instructional specialists. We have a little bit of a buffer. I do have one of our Reading Academy cohort leaders. Our number was 230-ish. We're holding spots for what we think will be new hires who's projected to retire, et cetera. So we have a little bit of buffer room, but it'll be almost 240. We're really maxing out those cohorts.
So we have the ability to choose the comprehensive over the blended based on our needs. For those 240, does it make sense for all of those 240 to still go through the comprehensive model?
Yes, especially a lot of who may be coming through this year. When you think about that criteria, we have a lot of third grade math and science teachers. They don't teach reading. They don't have the same experience and background. And for blended, they get on a device, they watch recordings, and they take a test online. And if they don't pass the test, they fail the blended, and then they're required to repeat in a comprehensive. So in the comprehensive, when there's more back and forth with their artifacts, particularly in this year when we're going to have a lot of non-reading teachers participating in Reading Academy, we want to be sure they have that support.
What have we heard from TEA, if anything, about expanding Reading Academies after next year?
So we've heard lots of grades mentioned, but not a timeline on anything. We have heard that they'll be going up to 4th and 5th grade. They said it would not be a separate Reading Academy. They would just change the model from being K3 to become K5. We've heard they'll add pre-K. We've heard they're adding 6, 7, and 8. But we don't have a concrete timeline on any of that, unfortunately.
Okay. Thank you, Holly.
How does this affect our ESSER teachers? Does it affect them at all, or is it?
If they are a full-time teacher and they pull students in K3, then yes. Now, many of our ESSER teachers, even though the ESSER funds will run out, will likely become our teachers when those ESSER funds run out. That was one of the exciting things about being able to have full-time interventionists, because we know that every year as we have openings come up, we've essentially trained up some of our own. They've been through our training and our PD.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. So district benchmarks, still with you.
I just thought I'd stay here for a moment. So we're going to jump up from our early grades of reading into English 1 and English 2. Last week I reported on 7th and 8th grade, so these are our 9th and 10th grade students this week. And this is still interim data that's related to our STAR EOC meets and master's grade level. So reminders of context for 9th and 10th graders, last year, in the middle of everything else we had going on, was the first year for their new TEKS and their new instructional materials. And we'll see some dips during that first year of implementation. And as we've discussed in previous reports, we're bringing the traditional student data forward for last year because that met our typical data trend lines. So when we look across the last several years, different groups of 9th graders in English 1, we had double-digit losses last year with our traditional students as we were implementing the new TEKS and new instructional materials. So we are coming back from that. We're not yet to those pre-pandemic rates, and we believe we've identified really a particular area in the test to concentrate and move forward. But so we're still a little ways from our goal. So we need those interventions between DBA2 and the STAR EOC exam to work on these areas where we're not yet hitting that target. So again, for different groups of 9th graders, when you look back to the far left of that chart, we tended to get larger steps between DBA1, DBA2, and STAR. Last year, the steps were not as strong, and this year, particularly at meets and masters, the steps were really flat. at master's, we weren't getting that step. So we need that next step from our DBA2 to STAR. And in particular, we're going to target the composition, which I'm going to talk about a little bit more here. When I look at this group of ninth graders, and I put some notes across the bottom because we have to remember when it comes to English, in 6th and 8th grade, they were only tested in reading. In 7th grade, there were separate reading and writing tests, and then now they're having a combined 5-hour test instead of separate 4-hour tests. But when I look back to when these students were in 7th grade, you can see their reading score was higher than their writing. And in looking at their composition and their writing this year and talking with teachers and the feedback we're getting from campuses, it is the composition where we need to target that strength. We can see at approaches, really, that is getting the kinds of steps that we need, not as much as meets or masters. And where meets and masters really comes in, the composition is about a fourth of the overall score for the test. And there are 2 raters that read each of their essays and give them up to 4 points. So an 8 would be like the highest score a student can get on composition, and we need them hitting 7s and 8s for masters, 6s and 7s for meets. So if we can target that composition, we got a lot of leverage there to work with. So English 2, as we talked about with U.S. history, moving from a single DBA to 2 CBAs because of the trimester schedule, and remembering they're not all at the same point. So we've made this move for this year. I do want to remind you, since they're CBAs and not a DBA, we do have different passing standards, and we talked a little about passing standards last week as well. For this particular test, for English 2, the standards on EOC, these are some of the highest that you see. You may remember from U.S. history, it was 78% to get masters, and for English 2, it is 90%. So it is actually very close to the standards that we were using on this CBA. So we had students that took English 2A in the fall and the winter tries. So I looked across each of those tries, how they grew between CBA 1 and CBA 2. So after about 10 weeks of instruction. So we saw nice gains in all of those areas. And then I put the student data back together. Whether you took it fall or winter, we saw overall a 6-point gain at meets and a 10-point gain at masters. Now, similar to talking about the composition in English 1, because this was a CBA, they worked on reading, they worked on the revising and editing portions of writing, but not the full composition. They work on that in class, but it was not part of this score. So we do think that that master's, had the composition been included, we would have seen more like we did with English 1, but I'm going to show you something in the history. We're well above these targets, but that's part of why we suspect that difference of 33% masters on the CBA versus where we've historically seen our EOC performance has to do with that composition. So we saw just a really nice spike at masters, but again, that's where, and meets above our target as well. But we need to look at those compositions. So this group of students, you can go back and look where they were in 7th grade as well, reading stronger than writing. So we're working on that composition. However, since these are 10th graders and they did take a combined reading writing test, I can also look at how did they do last year on the English 1 EOC. So while this 33 may be slightly inflated without the composition in it, when they took a composition, a full test last year, they were already well above the target for this year. So we feel confident in the ability to meet that target. We'll see, based on the interventions that those teachers provide, how close to this this CBA level they get on that assessment. I shared about the ELA app last week, and I gave you a QR code if you were curious to look at it in your Friday update. There's also an ELA app for English 1 and English 2 that have even more about writing skills. The 7th and 8th grade app, if you looked at the 8th grade app, would be heavier on reading with some writing support. But they've really got those writing pieces in there and written into the curriculum, added specifically as we saw this need with the composition, are some additional support pieces, short cycle assessments, really looking at when you're writing that composition, what kind of details do you use? And this is the language from the TEKS for precise and powerful word choices. And really working on that with the students, because it's those nuances in, picking just that right word, is there a better thing to say here, is where we really see that movement to a 7 or an 8 in the composition. So we're really targeting that skill between now and the EOC exams in both of these areas. Questions? Yes, sir.
So Holly, forgive me for not stopping you. Way back on slide 5, when we were talking about the English 1 DBA 2s, and you said we introduced new TEKS and you had double-digit losses. It says traditional only. Was there some online testing, or why are you not reflecting that? Or
So when we got to the end of the year with STAR and EOC, we had our OLO students and our traditional students. You may recall we reported them separately last year, and when we did our historical trend data, our traditional students kept the usual trend like we do, growing from DBA 1 to DBA 2 to STAR. Several of our OLO students were higher on their DBAs and dropped at STAR. It didn't reflect our usual pattern, and we think that may have been something with the integrity of the testing
okay,
in a different environment, not being in a school environment to take that.
okay, thanks.
Holly, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any data, since I've been through this? Now, some take it first and second try, some take it first and third, some take it second and third. Do you have any data on which combination does the best?
We really don't, because sometimes that is purposeful scheduling, and sometimes it's not. There have been different theories behind trying to front load for certain students. Sometimes our high school counselors would take 9th grade scores and say, okay, the ones that really struggled, we're not going to put them in because we want them taking that content second and third leading right up to. And other years, the thought was, maybe I need to get them right into it because they were a struggling learner, and if they fail Part A, I want to recycle them into Part A in the winter try and then go on to B. So we don't really at this level know if there was some deliberate grouping within the tries or not.
I know I did the scheduling, but I usually ran out of room in that third try for the kids that needed to be in that third try. Okay, here's the question that I'm always asked. If we're on the semester, every kid would be in English when they took the EOC. Would that make a difference?
That's a pretty big hypothetical.
Yes, that's one I had to answer many days.
I do not feel the impact is as large as English as perhaps in math, because we have spiraled English skills. When you look at their English TEKS, how completely vertically they are lined from the early elementary through their junior high and high school, that they have practiced those skills over and over, versus in a math class where this year I was doing algebra and the next year I'm doing geometry. I can't look back on the same type of history, but they've been doing the same thing in English for a lot of years, which I think gives them more carry through when they're not in the course currently.
I didn't have a problem with English, it was math and science I had a problem with. That's why I'm asking you the question.
Yeah, but
Okay,
if the
thank you.
compositions are an issue, it does seem like writing regularly, that's how you stay good at it, is through practice and repetitiveness.
And they need to be writing in all of their content area. As I know, our ELA coordinators will certainly chime in as well, and that is something we talk about in curriculum, is where are their opportunities? And we talk about that for our English language learners. Where are their opportunities to be expressive, both in written and oral language?
Thank you.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, district annual report, Dr. Harrington.
All right, so tonight we'll be presenting our district annual report. So part of the district annual report, we will present the TAPR, our district accreditation status, special ed education determination status, our PEIMS financial data, campus performance objectives, report on violent criminal incidents, and then information from the Higher Education Coordinating Board. When we complete the report, we will have our public hearing, and then tomorrow we will widely disseminate the information. Dave will send out that information. He already has it posted and is ready to send out. So the first piece is, we're going to talk TAPR, and I guess I've been informed too, we're the only ones in the state, I guess, who say TAPR. Everyone else is TAPR. We like TAPR. Anyways, we're going to continue with TAPR. The TAPR contains tremendous amount of information. I mean, if you ask me a question about another school or it's not ours, the first place I'm going is grabbing the TAPR, and that's where I'm going to find the information. So that was just the definition, but when I look at it, here are the things you find in. You find your STAR EOC scores, accountability reports, student attendance information, dropout information, graduation, CCMR data, APIB results, SAT. Additionally, special education determination status, student demographics, class size information, staff information, student enrollment by program, and teachers by program. So there's just a tremendous amount of information in these reports. So on the ratings, for 2021, the district, we were not rated, declared state of disaster 2021. And then special education determination status needs assistance, and Renee is going to present some information tonight explaining this current rating. What I wanted to do on the TAPR, I took a little snippet of, so this is our grade 7, the left side of the TAPR, and I kind of wanted to talk through it. So you always get 2 years worth of data. You're going to get those school years, the state data, the Region 11 data, the district data. Then going out from there, you're going to have student group data. So it's a long row of data. But if you look at a line, and make sure this, so there's that first line. So the district for 2021 in 7th grade reading, we were at 81%. So if you look that row to the left, you see Region 11 was at 72, the state was at 69. Now, if you look at the previous year, or the previous year we had scores, the 2019 scores, you do see that we had a drop, but again, that was our year of online and our disruption. So we went down 4 points, but if you look to the left, you know, the state, Region 11, they went down 6 points. You see the state went down 7. These don't hold true for everyone, but that's just how you read this. So that's at approaches. As you go through this, you can read again at the meets level for each year and compare them, and then for the masters for each year. So I did want to share that information on how you look at the TAPR in this area, which is the bulk of the report. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Renee Reek, our Executive Director of Special Education, and she's going to talk about the RDA.
Okay, good evening. So those of you that have been here a little while, this used to be called PBMAS. Same sort of thing. There are quite a few more indicators than we used to have. Our determination on RDA is the reason on the TAPR that it says needs assistance. So we'll look at that. We are currently working with TEA on a systematic support plan. We have a determination level of 2, 4 is the highest for special education. A determination level of 2 or more areas of moderate need have been identified. So we develop a strategic support plan, and these are the following areas where we're working with TEA to improve. The first one is least restrictive environment for 3 to 5-year-olds, and we're in our 2nd year with that, and I'll talk to you a little bit more about that as we go along. Discipline removals for special education students, we're in our 2nd year of that as well. And then significant disproportionality, we're going to talk a little bit about that. There are 56 indicators, and this is new in the last couple of years for significant disproportionality. And so we'll talk about that. Where we are year 1 is with Asian students identified as having autism, and a lot of districts are in the same boat. So there's a lot of professional development for this area, and we've tapped into some of that. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about discipline. We have had an issue with discipline on RDA and PBMS for a while. This particular indicator is 2 years behind in the reporting, so it's a year in arrears, and it comes from our summer snapshot data. So this is really looking at 1920 for this indicator this year. Okay, next year we will be off of the naughty list because we didn't have a whole lot of kids last year, and we're really working very hard to stay off this list for the following year. Some things that we've been doing is we've had some restorative practices training for junior high assistant principals, and I haven't said this, but the bulk of our issues are at junior high. The number of removals at junior high quadruple and more, high school and all of elementary. We've had training for junior high ISS staff, kind of how can we do some things in ISS to stop the recidivism, to stop the removals from class. We have training on PEMS, how are the action codes counted? How is this being calculated, and are we being smart on how we're putting this in the system? And we found we're actually counting too many. And so sometimes it's in the data. If you're not putting the data in correctly, then you're harming yourself. So we've had some training on that. 6 weeks discipline updates with principals. So every 6 weeks, I meet with all secondary principals, and then I meet with specific campuses, and we talk about specific kids and different interventions that they can do with those students. The APs and the principals have to call me at secondary anytime they're going to remove a student from the campus, and we kind of troubleshoot it. And a lot of times I'll say, we're not going to do that. You're going to do this instead, and here's some interventions, or you need to go back to ARD. We need to go back to the drawing board. This kid, I'm looking at this kid's IEP, and there are no supports in place. We need to put some supports in place. So it's been a long road, but it's been some good conversations. And they're starting to do those things before they call me, and hopefully we're being proactive, and students are staying in class, because that's what we want. All right, our strategic support plan for ECSE. So this is our 3 to 5-year-olds. And we added blended pre-K and blended kinder this year, and then TEA changed how this was being calculated. Really, it's your 3 and your 4-year-olds. And one reason we've had a difficult time with this is LRE on this indicator means they're receiving their special education supports in general ed. So you have to do inclusion to do well on this. So if they're pulled out for speech for 30 minutes twice a week, that's not going to help you. You've got to do speech in pre-K. So we're starting to do some of those things, and the blended pre-K should help. We're adding 2 more classes for next year. We found out that our blended kinder no longer helps because the only 5-year-olds that are, and this is the first year this has happened, the only 5-year-olds that are going to be counted in this are those that are still considered ECSE, so early childhood. If they're already in kinder, they no longer count. They do count on another indicator for LRE. So this year we will have 4 blended pre-K classes, and what that means is this is the only area where a teacher can be certified in general ed and special education and provide supports for all kids. And so we have selected 5 students to be in that pre-K class that have IEPs, and we have 2 assistants in those classes. So this year went really well, so I'm sure next year will be great too. Significant disproportionality. Like I said, there are 56 indicators for this. This is when LEAs exceed the state-established risk ratio threshold of 2.5. It measures multiple areas: least restrictive environment, special education representation, discipline. Last year we were close on some discipline categories, so I'm watching that. John Hollis and I can both watch it along the way. And then if a district hits year 3 of significant disproportionality, we have to set aside 15% of our IDEA federal funds for corrective action. And I can tell you currently that will mean salaries. So that's a pretty big hit. We're in year 1, and so we don't even want to get to year 2. Okay, and what we're doing for this one, TA was very impressed when I met with them that we were even working on this one already, and I said, I'm not getting to year 3. So we've had some training for our staff on autism evaluations. We've made some adjustments to our parent questionnaire used in these evaluations, adjustments to our guiding questions, and some training for our early childhood evaluation team, because we have a lot of Nepalese families that come in and have evaluations for 3 and 4-year-olds, and so we have them asking more questions when those students come in for assessments. Okay, oops, and that's it for me. Any questions?
Any questions on this portion?
Renee, on the significant disproportionality, the 3 years, is that 3 consecutive years, or is it 3 years in a span of another period of time?
It's 3 consecutive years. It's a good question.
And we've hit 1.
We've hit 1.
Okay.
Yeah, but there's 56 areas, so hopefully we won't hit any more.
Renee, what are some of the reasons that kids are getting taken out?
Of class for discipline. Fights. And there's some things that, you know, we kind of decided as a group for safety reasons have to happen. Drugs, weapons. I will say we haven't had as many weapons this year as in the past. Assaults. And so those are some of the main ones that when they call me, they know we're going to have a conversation, and the students are probably going to be removed for those safety measures. You know, just being rude, making fun of people, you need to kind of handle that on your campus. So, and we need to look at their IEP. Are we supporting the student the way we need to be? Does the student need some social skills? Does the student need a behavior plan? And sometimes it's just a matter of having a point person that the student can go to. So we've had a lot of good conversations about how to do things differently. But I think those things I mentioned, you would want students to be removed for those things.
Those junior high years are really, really difficult, even if you don't have any special needs. But when you have a child with special needs in that junior high time frame, things can get out of hand very quickly if you don't have the supports for them.
Yes, definitely. I taught junior high, so you gotta be a little weird to hang out there, so. And I still like it. All right, any other questions? All right,
Any other
thank you.
questions? Thank you.
Okay, next, we're going to bring Gail Longup, Coordinator of Accountability and Assessment, and usually we would have presented these scores earlier, but we were waiting on some final scores, and so I have the finality of the TAPR scores, and we have Gail here, so she's going to go ahead and present these now.
Okay, so for 2021, the SAT data, number of students we tested in the district for SAT was 514. And for reading, so evidence-based reading and writing, it changed from 3 tests to 2 3 years ago. So our district average is 556 on evidence-based reading and writing, and our math average is 552. And then you can see the state and the nation scores there. So this is just a little closer look at it between HEB, Texas, and the nation for their scores. And then this is broken down by school. So Bell is 580 on evidence-based reading and writing, and 568 for Trinity. And the numbers out beside it, Bell had 198 students test, and Trinity had 316. That is actually a big drop from the years past of the number of tests taken. And that is 2 reasons. One, COVID, and the other reason is a lot of colleges stopped requiring it. And so on top of that, at the same time colleges stopped requiring it, Texas has moved SAT and ACT over to the accountability realm. So we started 2 years ago giving it during the school day. So this is actually a year behind data. So next year you'll see a great increase in the number of students that took it because we'd be looking at last year's test takers, whereas this is looking at 1920 test takers. So we give it at both Bell and Trinity during the school day to all juniors. So our number will greatly increase for number of test takers. So this is just the trend line for data from 20 and 21. And you can see where Bell is steadily climbing in their scores, and Trinity has kind of just flatlined a little bit or stayed the same. Global is going down as well as the state. So this is the math trend. Any questions on SAT?
Gail or Joe, if a student at Keys wanted to take it, could they?
Absolutely.
Are they
yes.
encouraged to? I mean, I
Yes.
don't see it on this data, but I'm sure. Okay.
Yes. Sorry, I should have said that. We offer it to all 11th graders. Okay, so same with ACT. We actually don't offer a school day version. We offer one, and we chose to offer the SAT. However, because of the accountability piece this year, we went back and all students who took 8th grade biology, so that's the Central Junior High biology program, they are required to take a higher level science test in high school, and the SAT does not offer science. So we actually, we looked back at the students that are graduating that are 11th graders this year. So I'm actually giving the test tomorrow to 49 students. So those are the students that are 11th graders now. We're giving that at the Pat May to those 49 kids, and the district is paying for that as well so that we can get those students tested. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from the parents there because they can't always get off on a Saturday or afford to take the ACT, so they're really excited for the opportunity to take the ACT. The ACT. So these are our district averages. You can see that we are above the state and the nation as far as our scores on each of the tests, so English, math, reading, science, and then their composite score. And this is the same, just broken down into a graph so you can kind of see where HEB falls. And then this is Bell and Trinity data and HEB. Same lines, Bell is going up just a little bit, and Trinity and HEB as a district are staying the same. Here's our trend in math. Reading, the science, and the Texas and Global are basically on top of each other on that chart. And then composite as well, they're very close. So that is all on the SAT and ACT data. I will say on the TAPR report, the passing score or that's counted for evidence-based reading and writing, a student has to get greater than or equal to 480 on the SAT and greater than or equal to 530 on the mathematics. And then, so any student that meets that in their high school career, so 9th through 12th grade, for the TAPR, I call it the taper. I'm the one that Dr. Joe yells at. No. The TAPR, it's actually all the students, so it takes their highest score, their highest SAT score in there. So if they take it 3 times in high school, it's their highest one that's included in the data set, divided by the number of graduates for that school year. So our number, I feel like we're going to see really jumping up because we're going to have a lot more kids take it. Again, we gave it to every junior that was at school. We took it actually last week on March 2nd. And so we had, I think, 1,700 students test for SAT. So any questions? Yes.
Again, Gail and Joe, do I need to be concerned, or is there any explanation as to why Bell seems to be trending up and Trinity seems to be trending down on these over a 3-year period?
That's a
Is there
great question
demographics, or
because
is there interesting data, or?
We'll continue to watch it. I mean, we have seen some very high performance out of both schools, but usually they are very close to one another, so we will continue to watch that.
And neither one of them offers anything outside for the SAT. So I don't know if it's just the students that are taking it at that time. But they're not offering one, Bell's not
Right.
offering something that Trinity's not.
Right, usually with the 118 more kids, you're gonna have a lower
Fair
score
enough.
overall. But we didn't see any numbers on how many kids at each school took the ACT. Is that on here somewhere?
No, it's not.
We know
We only have senior data for ACT, and it doesn't come, it's not a file that I can see singular students in.
Okay.
It's
So we
just
know
overall.
149 for the district, but we don't know how many at Bell and how many at Trinity.
No, and I will tell you, just over my last 5 years of being an HEB, I'm the coordinator for the SAT and ACT that's paid through College Board and the AP program. And on Saturdays, we always have we've always had more students come and take the SAT versus the ACT. And I think that's been mostly because colleges looked in the past more at SAT, and ACT was more of a, yes. And ACT is more just your math and science kids that want to go on. Because in the past, I've had about 500, between 500 and 600 take the SAT, and that's other districts come too on those Saturdays, so it could be anybody in the state come to our schools. We do have mostly Bell and Trinity there because we're hosting it, but at ACT, I have about 100 students, so a lot less students take the ACT than the SAT.
Yeah, I know in the past that we've noticed that art students seem to do better in comparison to the world average and the state average on the ACT than on the SAT. But
It's a friendlier test, I can tell you that. And it's shorter. So, and it has less parts, so. Any other questions?
Gil, a couple clarifications. On the SAT data on slide 16, where we have the number of tested, 514, that number is, with 1,600 graduates, that number is devastatingly low. I'm
It is.
hopeful to hear the new numbers that you bring us again that reflect this last round of testing. Is 514 individual students or number of tests taken?
Individual students.
So if a student took it a couple of times,
It only counts their highest score.
okay, and they would only be counted one time?
I thought SAT was their last score.
No, their highest.
They have changed that? Then it was always, okay, I'm sorry, they've changed that. If for years, it was always, SAT always reported to us their last score, not necessarily their highest, where the CCMR and your college readiness data still had to produce your highest score, but the report they gave us for many years was always just their last score regardless of how well they did.
And this is highest? This is highest?
Yes.
Okay.
That is new.
But in addition to the fact that colleges during this time period weren't taking, announced that they didn't want this information anymore, wasn't there also a long period of time where you couldn't even get a test taken, even if you wanted to?
There were, during COVID year, there were a lot of sites that canceled and you couldn't take it, yes. But this number really has dropped. If they're going out of state, they don't take it. I mean, they don't take the SAT or ACT if they already know that they're going out of state to college. So, but yes, these are the numbers of that time, of the year that they weren't offering it. There were 3 months straight where they couldn't go anywhere to take an SAT at all.
yeah, so for comparison, I don't know if you'd have this handy, what were our SAT numbers in 2019? Do we know how many students took it
I do,
before COVID?
somewhere. Might be back there. John, is there a loose paper back there? 892, I'm gonna guess off the top of my head. Last year, do you have it? Or Ella? Oh, 832. The year before that was 925.
And all of this was prior to when we were giving it
School day,
to all kids in
correct,
school.
correct. All of these numbers are just kids that came on Saturdays to a location in the state of Texas to take it, that were our students.
Okay, so that number was probably a little less than half of our half of our juniors at that time.
Yes, it's definitely going to go up, yes. I think we had, I didn't open Trinity's email, but we had about 52 kids absent from Bell. So out of their 800 juniors, 50 were absent. So we have 750 kids just at one school that took the SAT this year.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Anything else?
All right, thank you.
Okay, so the next piece of the annual report is the financial data, the PEIMS financial data. So we download that report and it is posted on the website, and that is sent out when that data is sent out to all our parents to access. We have the performance objectives. We have downloaded all of the summaries. And then if anyone wants to see the full plans, we have those available too, but the plans have been downloaded also on the page. Report on violent and criminal incidents. So we do report those. I just want to jump to the report. It is very small. We have a total of 9 incidents. So assault of someone other than district staff 4, and felony controlled substance violation 5. So that was last year with reduced number of students. The total number from the previous year was 31. All right, so again, with a lot less people in school last year. Those numbers did change. Student enrollment, academic performance. This is the report from the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And what this report is, it tells us the students who have enrolled in a Texas public school 2-year or 4-year, and just the report is printed, but it gives just raw numbers. The overall number for HEB is 56% of our students, and that is a change. We had been 56.1. So it is a very similar number. This does not include private schools. This does not include any out-of-state schools. So if a student is at any of those situations, they are not included in that number. So it's a great baseline to look at. We want to watch it move, but we also know it does not represent all of our students. So reporting requirements, we have the public hearing. Then the dissemination of the data within 2 weeks after the hearing. We will begin that tomorrow morning. And then school report cards will also be sent out also. So that is at one time was part of the annual report. It has been separated, and I don't know why they separated it, because I think they may have thought they weren't coming out. They're a little later than they had been. But we had a separate guidance on that, but we are distributing those also. If anyone does have more contact, I am the contact. And that is the information. If you have any questions.
Any additional questions for Dr. Harrington?
Joe, on the school report cards, you know, we said they were released on February 3rd, but, no, February 3rd of this year.
Yes.
But for every campus, it's not rated because of the pandemic, right?
Yeah, there is.
Can you touch on that?
There is no rating, so those, the school report cards, very similar data that you would find on the Tapper. You can find that overall scores, but it does show they are not rated this year due to the, it's the same wording, I'm sorry. Yes, the disaster.
And no distinction information.
Yeah, no distinctions.
For the performance objectives, did I hear you say that we have the performance objectives available if they want them?
What we have the summaries of the campus plans, and we have the campus plans available that have those. We are going to post the performance objective report. I'm working on having it reformatted right now. It wasn't going to be able to be placed on there. So as soon as I have that reformatted, we will add that also. We haven't added that in the past, but we can add that report. We also, under the violent crime, we also have added links to our safety and an emergency response page and to our student code of conduct and handbook. So all of those are in one location so they can access those reports.
All right, any more questions? All right, so we will go down to public comment on the district annual report. This is a public meeting, so I declare this public meeting now open to hear comments concerning the report presented on the district annual report. Was there anybody wishing to speak about this public report? Yeah, just give your name to Ms. Hollander, and then. And you will have 3 minutes.
Well, knowing that I have secondary students, my concerns are looking at the college and career military readiness. And I'm assuming this is what, I mean, I just printed this off the website. I don't know what page it is, they're not numbered. But when I look here, we're lower than the state in every area of college-ready, graduate, English language arts, math. We're lower than than the state in every subject area. And something that I'm hearing all the other districts have is they have collegiate academies and kids are graduating with associate degrees. Are we gonna consider something like that in the future? That'd be really beneficial to half of the district who's low SES. But then whenever I look through here, I mean, are we not offering enough dual credit classes? We're offering less than the state, it looks like. And this is just me sitting here looking while you guys are talking. Another concern I have is, like you were asking about the SAT. On the year, this data says 54% of kids took the SAT, in the state, 76%. Why are we not encouraging the kids to take the SAT more? And the ACT scores, my 7th grader got the scores that these seniors got. So something's gotta improve. The advanced dual credit courses, all of our scores are lower than the state on the kids getting credit when they take these classes. What is the reason for this? What are we doing to address it? At some point, somebody on the board has to answer questions or like call me or email me. I am the one parent who comes to all of these meetings. I deserve for somebody to be answering my questions. You've all stopped responding.
Thank you. I know that dual course credits are something that we're certainly looking into and
The only area that we're higher in is IB. I don't want to put my kid through IB.
okay.
And that's the only area that we're higher than. Everything else is lower. That's,
No, those are all good points, and we'll definitely be
I'll
looking
clean up
into
all my
those.
stuff from earlier too.
All right, any other comments?
Hi there. I just want to affirm two things, concerns that were expressed from the board. One was the Trinity scores trending down. They were not staying flatline. They were definitely going down. So I'd like to change, hopefully instead of we're watching that to we're investigating why. I think that's a valid concern. The other one is the situations where children have to be removed from classrooms. I know that we were talking about special needs students, but I am hoping that there is definitely support for the administrators, because I know I removed my son from entering 5th grade at Bedford Heights many, many years ago because there was a bullying situation going on, not just to my son, but to several people. And there was no, administration wasn't doing anything about it. When there finally was a severe enough action that had taken place, which was outside the school, out front during pickup time, where one of the two bullies had grabbed the back of one of my son's friends' heads and had banged it on his knee and bloodied his nose. He had 3 days of in-school suspension, so his parents weren't affected. He wasn't really affected. He was in the office chatting with people. At the end of the 2nd day, he was able to go out to recess, and same for 3rd day. And recess really is where a lot of the bullying occurs. And when we went in for a conference to inquire about that, we handle things in-house. And though I know the lady that was talking here, is giving strategies to those administrators, it's important that those administrators do have support. So I would follow up on that, because they do stop calling and say, you know what, she's just going to say, we can't remove them, we have to do strategies. But they could really cause, sorry, I get emotional about it, they really could cause serious harm to someone else, which I don't think the district wants to face that. So strategies is good, yes, but if there is danger, just to make sure those administrators know, you can call me and we will remove a child that could harm another child for their safety and protection. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any additional? All right, if there is no further discussion, I close this public meeting. And we will now move down to 8.01, financial statements for the month of January 2022.
Doesn't matter, I can't. Good evening. Financial statements, maybe not quite as exciting as taper. Sorry, Joe, I'm a taper guy. I'm with you, Gail. Where's Gail? Gail's still here. She left.
In the back.
Anyway, that might be regional or wherever you're from, possibly, that pronunciation. Anyway, we're going to look at the financial statements ending January 31st, 2022. In the general fund, please reference page 2 through 6 of your detailed financials if you want to follow along in that way. For the month, we had a fund balance of $208,762,797. This is revenues over expenditures of $65,893,455. As we've talked about in prior months, that's big jump is in tax collections. Our tax collections for the month of January were $5,053,590. So these next few months, you'll see that number jumping up because we are in peak tax collection season. So I did put in here revenues over expenditures are $65.9 million. And of course, we look at these compared to prior year. And last year at this time, we were at $95.2 million. So that kind of stuck out to me. So I wanted to know why that was. And I just really wanted to point that out because it's not due to where we are at with tax collections. We are on track with tax collections. We also get revenue from the state. And at this point last year and during the same period, we had about $56 million in state revenue by the end of January as compared to about $26 million this year. So roughly about that $30 million difference is due to state revenue, which that fluctuates and changes every year depending on how settle up goes each year, when we get those deposits, when they're put in. Anyway, just wanted to say all that to say it's nothing to be alarmed about if you're looking at that, comparing it to last year. So expenditures as of 1/31 are at 40.11%. Of course, 5 months out of 12 is 42%, so we're tracking a little bit below that, so that's good. There is a negative balance if you're looking at the detail in function 32 of $369,500. That is due to social work services for the current period that is from communities and schools payment being reclassified to ESSER 3 funds, so that explains that one. There is a small credit balance in function 61 that is due to the receipt of parent payments for books purchased in the prior period. And of course, we make adjustments as the year goes to correct those negative balances. Everything else is tracking normally for this time of year for the general fund. The expenditure matrix, or better known as the Wrestler report, I tried putting the whole report on there, but it was just too small to read, so I just took it off, and I've put the highlights on this slide. Payroll is at $67,703,528 for the period is currently at 87%, which is where we typically run for the year. As you recall, in earlier months that had been lagging behind, but it's finally caught up, and it should stay right around that 87–88% for the rest of the year. Our number 2 expenditures, utilities, $1,746,120 is at 2% of our expenditures. Then our third biggest expense, instructional supplies, is at $993,753. Food service fund, debt service or fund balance of $208,762,797. That is $65,893,455 revenues over expenditures. Of course, these are referenced on page 8 and 9, as you can see there. We are at 37.01% at the end of January when looking at our 5 months out of 12 ratio of 42%. So we're under where we should be for the year there. And of course, as we said last month, a lot of that is just due to being short-handed with people in food service. We continually look, but we hire one leaves. I mean, it's just kind of a revolving door, but everything else is tracking normally, and that department continues to do very well, especially as short-handed as they are. So hats off to Mariella for that. The debt service fund balance of $45,551,607. That's $32,579,30 revenues over expenditures. Of course, this fund goes up as tax collections come in, so this fund will continue to go up. The revenues with very little expenditures coming out, other than the debt service payment we just made at February 15th. Thank you for the heart attack, Mr. Chapman. He came in my office and told me he got a call that we didn't make our debt service payment, which would be disastrous. And that, anyway, it's another story for another day. Of course, that first debt service payment is basically all interest. Our second payment in the year, which will be due August 15th, that one a little over $29 million will be interest and principal. And of course, our total debt service is just under $37 million for the year. Pre-K CK fund balance $229,695. That's revenues over expenditures in the amount of $209,680. We're at 37.76% compared with under our 42% ratio. That program, like I say, it's doing very well with kids back in school, and we don't anticipate any issues. Everything is tracking just as it should with that fund. Special revenue funds. Of course, we don't put all of those up here because there are multiple funds lumped into this one big fund that we have. That consists of federal, state, and local grants. If you want to look at the detail of that, it's on page 16 and 17 of your detailed financials. As we've said in the past, these are self-sufficient funds. Basically, whatever we get in, we try to expend that throughout the year. There are a few anomalies there on that report. Function 31 guidance and counseling supplies have a $4,350 credit. That's due to TEA ABIP exam fee subsidies. Function 33, the health services payroll is over by a small amount of $496 after the Medicaid credits were applied in January. And then function 41, there's the overage created in the admin supply code, function 41, due to a computer that basically was purchased, but it was administrative, so it had to be charged to that function. So we will make adjustments and corrections to correct those as we go. And then, of course, there's a $42,000 deficit, which was mainly due to $47,000 in IMA expenditures, $29,000 in campus technology purchases, and some other minor amounts for summer LEP and APIB. Of course, as we make those expenditures, we also apply for those reimbursements from TEA, so those will self-correct. Other than that, the programs are tracking just as we expect. Campus Activity Fund balance $3,073,956. That's $121,437 revenues over expenditures. This fundraising activities are just rocking right along as we would expect. So everything in that fund is doing just as we expect it to be doing. Bond fund, 2018 bond fund, fund balance of $28,331,440. The expenditures exceed revenues in this fund, $4,943,076. Of course, there are no revenues in this fund unless we sell bonds, which we won't do until we have bonds to sell. So that expenditures, all we're doing is spending money out of that fund at this point, which right now, that is mostly going to the support staff building at West Hurst, finishing that up, and then paying some other retainages and holdbacks we have on some of the prior projects that have been completed. So we're almost done with that 2018 bond fund. And then, of course, moving forward, we'll spend the remainder of that on part of the Bel Air project. So, locally defined capital projects fund, fund balance of $48,007,379. Same thing here. Expenditures over are greater than revenues in the amount of $423,907. Of course, much like the bond fund, these funds are not, there are no revenues unless the board, as I've said in the past, decides that we want to transfer funds from our other fund balance into this fund balance. And most of these funds are currently being used for the new projects such as the Transition Center, which we'll look at some stuff here later, that remodel, and then some other projects discussed at the November 21st board meeting. Any questions?
Any questions on the financials? All right, we'll move down to budget transfers.
Budget transfers for the month are, you have that detail there before you, and it's up on the screen. Very minor, minimal, just moving some money around to pay for, let's see, some instructional travel, some curriculum, but as you can see, in very small amounts there, so nothing significant.
All right, any questions on budget transfers? All right, the 2022-2023 staffing table. Ms. Tuttle?
I just want to let you know that the staffing table, of course, tonight is for review and then approval of consideration at the end of March. But we're very excited to be able to begin posting positions this week. And so once you all had an opportunity to see the staffing table, those positions may be posted. Of course, we would not fill those until after the approval of the staffing table, but this is a concerted effort that we've made this year to have those positions instead of being anticipated positions prior to spring break and waiting until we return to begin posting the actual live positions. Those requests to post have been coming in this week, and we'll get those started and be able to be ready to allow administrators to recommend once you guys approve the staffing table on the 28th. So thank you for your support in that.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you. Choice Partners National Purchasing Cooperative. We received this information. Does anybody have any questions on it?
I do.
Okay.
Toby or Joe. So what contracts are competitively procured by Harris County that we're interested in?
Harris, we don't actually purchase anything through Harris County. Harris County is just the administrator for the Choice Partners. It's like a purchasing co-op, like TASB Buy Board, like one of the Region Center co-ops. So we don't actually purchase anything through them. Is that what you're asking?
Well, my understanding is this agreement will allow us to purchase through various vendors that they have contracts with.
Well, they don't have contracts with them. They have, Cindy might have to help me explain. This is just adding another co-op that has to give us more opportunities to search out products. And I think this one is particularly, I think Mariella and Food Services. They've got some vendors on that co-op that have different products and stuff as she's trying to upgrade some of her serving lines and maybe freezer equipment and stuff. But anything else you can add to that? Or?
Right. Choice Partners, when Mariella and I talked about this, she has a need for some additional child nutrition software, which some of the vendors are on here. Some always more vendors if she needs repair parts for equipment, some of her coolers, some of her freezers and stuff. There's some additional vendors that she could use off of this vendor this cooperative as well. It's just to help maybe build a base of more vendors for her to be able to go to look for parts if she needs more. There's some food service supply vendors if she's looking for hard-to-find items where she's been trying to secure maybe paper items in her program, some foam items and stuff, just maybe more vendors to avenues where maybe her current supplier's out, where she could have an alternate one to contact, see if they have something to be able to bring in to keep her going, so.
Do any other districts around here use HCDE?
Yes, HDCE is administers the cooperative. Many of the cooperatives are overseen by another agency. Like we are members of MRPC, Multi-Regional Purchasing Cooperative, which is Region 10. We're with TIPS Cooperative, which is Region 4. So many of them have a lead agency, but go by another name. So this one is Choice Partners. It is Harris County is the agency that
Our
oversees
contract will
it.
be with Harris County.
Correct.
Okay, so do any other school districts that we know of have this agreement in place?
Yes, there is, I believe Keller is a part of it, Northwest, Denton. I could investigate and see more that are probably members of it. Those are just ones I know offhand.
Okay. What can you tell us about the Harris County Department of Education?
I've been in 4 districts, and we've purchased stuff through Harris County Departments of Education in all 4 of those districts, through the co-op. Like I say, it's just another purchasing avenue. They bid things out, pre-bid them out, much like we would go out to bid, but they're pre-bid, so that we don't have to go through that long, drawn-out process, advertising, do all that, and it just gives us opportunities to purchase things without bidding it out. We, of course, still look for the best value in whatever we're buying. I mean, it doesn't mean just because they have a price on it, doesn't mean we won't look at other co-ops that possibly have that same product and get the best deal we can get.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, Chromebook computer replacement. Any questions on this? eStar 2022-2023 renewal. Any questions? Agile Mind Agreement. Any questions on this agreement? All right, the Birdville Regional Day School Program for the Deaf Agreement. Any questions? All right, replacement of the BCTA audiovisual equipment. Any questions on this?
This is good.
All right, and out-of-state, out-of-country student travel. Any questions on any of these trips?
I just have one quick question. I notice insurance is provided on all of them. Should something change, do these parents get their money back, or is that the way that insurance reads, Conrad?
I think it's insurance while on the trip, not necessarily trip insurance.
Oh, that's true. Okay, that's my question. Thank you.
You may have already answered it, but yes, all 3 of these trips are for next summer of '23, but all of them it's either through EF Tours or there was a new company that we're using, but very similar to EF. Insurance is required, and almost always there's a staggered fee. The closer you get to the trip, obviously there's a reduction in refund, but there are times for them to completely opt out.
All right.
Any other additional questions?
No, thank you, Conrad.
Thank you. All right, now we're down to action items. Consideration of approval schematic design for the transition center conversion. This is something that we went over last week. Are there any additional questions from the board? All right, well, I will accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the schematic design for transition center conversion.
Second?
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the schematic design for transition center conversion. Please vote. And that motion passes. All right, item 9.02, consider approval for abatement services at the transition center. Were there any comments on that? Any questions from the board? I will accept the motion.
I move that the board approve the do not exceed amount to Enviro Services, Inc. for the services requested.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for the board to approve the do not exceed amount to Enviro Services, Inc. for the services requested. Please vote. And that motion passes. We are ready for open forum number 2. All right, Lisa Langston.
Thank you. Two things, completely different aspects. I did not get to be here last week, but I'm just wondering, I know the superintendent job was posted. I just didn't know how far we went to get candidates, or if we don't. I know that in private schools and other districts, they usually narrow it down to 3, and you know, they let people know, and then there's a process. So I was just curious, and I know you can't answer me, but I will try to email you all. So going into my second question, I will always fight for the young children. And I know that you've heard me discuss before about back to basics and fundamentals being important for our littles. I am probably going to be homeschooling some kiddos next year that will not go to kindergarten. They will stay home, do a pre-K program, and then possibly I will homeschool them again for kindergarten if it works out. We'll see. But I will email you all 2 articles recently, research that children who play a little more than academics are forced are more successful later on in 6th through 12th grade if they're allowed to play pre-K and K a little more than they are forced academics down their throat. When I taught here in HEB, I was one of the only teachers that had play centers in both kindergarten, and I was 1st grade also in my classes because I thought it was very, very important as part of their day. I just recently learned that all of the play furniture, such as our stoves and ovens and kitchens and things like that for HEB, are stored in a room here in HEB. They are no longer in the classrooms, even for kindergarten. So I would encourage you all to look into that, and I will email you all the 2 recent research articles, but I can tell you that any pre-K teacher does not need a research article to tell you that those little babies need that time to free their mind from academics and play and imagine and role play and pretend. And I think that if we were to put that back into our programs instead of just all academics, that I think in the long run, we would have more successful kiddos 6th through 12th grade. But I'll send you those articles so y'all can look it up on the research recently done. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. See, opportunity for board members to request items to be placed on future agendas. Anybody have anything? All right, review of the board activity chart. Sorry, I just noticed it was sitting here, so I haven't actually looked at it yet. I still need to pass it on. So I will pass this down so that everyone can go ahead and finish that out.
Okay.
Excuse me. All right, 11.03, review and discussion of board goal number 3. Don and Fred.
So I made some notes here, or some notes were provided for me as well. Just a quick review. As you will recall, during the February 14th work session, all of us participated in the consensogram to determine the district's legislative priorities, which were avocation for the board until the new legislative agenda. By the way, thank you guys for participating. As a result of that, it was pretty obvious. When the district legislative agenda is developed, the next legislative session, we'll do a divide and conquer of all legislative agenda priorities. In addition, we will track and document our advocacy efforts on the priorities we choose from the 2022-2024 HEB legislative agenda. More to come on that plan. However, we were thinking at this time, since we're nearing the end of the biennium, we've determined one priority, which you guys helped determine, that we should put as a priority, and that's going to be transitional funding. This doesn't prevent any of us from advocating for other priorities, but it certainly gives us a lead-in if we only have the opportunity to communicate one, that we kind of stand behind this. And so we've put together talking points, which is on the second page for you guys to review, see if there's any comments that you would give me or Dawn. If not, then we're going to probably turn this into at least a priority leave behind of some of the things. There's many things we want to advocate in public ed, but this will be something that we start from, which is transitional funding.
And I don't know if it would help any of you, but I have a list for some of the advocating that I did through the LAC. I have a list of all the Region 10 and 11 districts that also have transition funding that David made for me. So I don't know if that would help the rest of you to have a copy of that, but
That'd be awesome.
if Dobie doesn't have it, I can get it to him as well.
So what I'm asking you guys is to look this over. This is the priority that we put together, and if there's any edits to it, otherwise we'll convert this into something a little bit more prettier.
Did you want to mention that this is on here?
Go ahead, why don't you?
On our board activity chart, it actually now lists advocacy event/conversation so that we can start documenting that each month it will be listed on here. So you can mark whether or not you had that with, as well as any specific detail as well that you can provide.
Very good.
All right, thank you. All right, so at this time, the board will be going into closed session pursuant to Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code, Chapter 551. The board will adjourn to closed session under Section 551.071 to 551.074.
Look it up. All right, I'll look it up. Here's my,
Chris.
of course, I haven't looked into it.
800 meters, $1,000 second.
Yours?
Yeah. He's in a track meet now.
Hey, where are they doing it?
They're right here.
Let's change seats. All right. We are reconvening from closed session, and I will accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved?
We are adjourned.